Hi everyone, today we're going to be doing a presentation on one of the more controversial herbicides in the history, well, at least in our generation, and the product is called MSMA, also known as monosodium methaarsenate. We're going to talk about the history of the herbicide, we're going to talk about what went wrong with the herbicide, we're going to talk about alternatives to the herbicide, and we're going to talk about what's coming up in the future. For those of you that don't know, my name is, Matt. Sometimes I go by the Grass Factor. I have a background in lawn care. I worked in corporate lawn care for many years, and then I was self-employed in lawn care for many more years after that. And these days, I'm more involved in fertilizer manufacturing. Specifically, I'm on the R&D side of new fertilizer technology development. If you get anything out of this presentation today as we move forward, a couple things that I'll ask for you. If you are of means, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/burn return. That's also a podcast we do covering more of the news that influences the green industry. As we come up later in the video, we're going to be sponsored by my buddies over at GAINTRUST for this video. So anyway, we'll get more into that later. To kick things off, let's talk about what exactly is MSMA. One thing I do want to note about this presentation, you're not going to be able to read a lot of the white text on the screen. That's okay, because that's more for my notes talking to you than it is for you to be able to read. I would rather you listen to me than you would necessarily be reading the screen. But what exactly is MSMA? It is a non-selective organic arsenical. Did you hear that? There's several different things that I said there. Number one, being non-selective. What does that mean? That means anything it is applied to dies, right? That's the intent of it. It has no targeted selectivity like a phenoxy like 2,4-D is applied to a broadleaf weed and targets broadleaf weeds. It's going to leave behind grassy weeds. MSMA is non-selective. It's also an organic arsenical. So what does that mean? That means it is utilizing arsenic as its active ingredient. Kind of the history of arsenicals in general is that it has a wide variety of usages, right? So it's been used as everything from pharmaceutical products, disinfectants, beyond just herbicides, and also growth promotants, right? Back in the day, there used to be a use for an organic arsenical called a Toxil. It was used to treat syphilis. And then also we have chemical weapons that were used in history, Clark Agent 1 and Clark Agent 2, chlorodiphenylarsine. So, the point being here that we're setting up is that this is not what we would consider a fairly typical herbicide that we would find on the market today. So, the primary OG use, like where it got started and kicked off and people started learning about it, was not actually turfgrass, right? It started as an ag product, and it was primarily used in cotton. It would be used pre-plant, and then you would catch some applications being made, like for example, 4 weeks after emergence or 8 weeks after emergence, and then they started narrowing the data and said, well, we see too much plant injury that causes a decrease in yield after about 12 weeks of application. So pre-plant early on, or use as a defoliant later in the season too, meaning that you're stripping all the foliage that during harvest that you're targeting just the cotton. And then it developed a little bit of a reputation of doing that. However, what happened was in Hawaii. Hawaii is a notoriously difficult place to grow grass. What's up, Ray? And the reason why is due to the weed pressure that exists there. And one of the more common strategies of managing weeds in Hawaii at the time was using triazine herbicides, right? What is a triazine herbicide? We're talking about atrazine, we're talking about simazine, we're talking about metribuzin. And where they would lack total control and only achieve some degree of suppression, they found that tank mixing a triazine with MSMA increase the overall amount of control, the degree of control that they were getting on difficult to control grassy weeds. It was its adoption there that it developed a reputation that then spread throughout the entire Southeast United States. So again, we talked about arsenic being the primary active ingredient, right? Arsenic is phytotoxic to plants. What does that mean? That means it damages the plant in different aspects. Specifically, the damage that occurs is going to interrupt photosynthesis. As we know, photosynthesis is taking light energy and converting it into chemical energy. And so by interrupting that process, the plant cannot create chemical energy. And if we are not able to, as anything living does not have energy, of course, it will fail. Once it exploded in the southeast, there was pretty much no containing it at that point, right? So from the early 70s all the way until 2006, it was primarily used. When I got kicked off in lawn care, it was something that you reached for pretty much all summer long if you were on Bermuda grass, right? In fact, back in the day when I was in corporate lawn care, that would be what I had on my truck at all times. It would be something like Sedgehammer or Bassagran, MSMA, and then 2,4-D, right? And anybody that's ever mixed 2,4-D and MSMA knows what a disaster that can be. So a little bit of trickery there. But anyway, just to point back to my age, and speaking of my age, I remember this very clearly in 2006 when 2 Florida golf courses had a pond that ended up testing positive for high levels of arsenic, and the holy hell broke loose. What happened? The EPA got involved. Of course the EPA got involved, and what did they say? They said, we have got to shut it down. So what they ended up doing is suspending the label of MSMA. And this is where the great controversy began, right? Because the EPA was calling in experts, and the experts were saying what we need to look at from a chemistry and a biochemistry perspective is, as an arsenic, are we dealing with organic arsenic or are we dealing with inorganic arsenic? Organic arsenic contains covalently bonded atoms to carbon, typically, right? So you have ionic bonds, and then you have covalent bonds, shared electrons, right? It's a very, very strong bond, right? So organic arsenic is significantly less toxic than inorganic arsenic, right? Inorganic arsenic is either going to contain elemental or metallic arsenic, and that is going to be bound to non-carbon containing chemical elements, right? It is extremely toxic by comparison to organic arsenic. So when they tested the water at these places, what they ended up finding was inorganic arsenic, the toxic one. Where did it come from, right? Well, the EPA started putting together this idea, this theory that what had happened was we had a not good, not great, bad news type of scenario. What they were able to do is that we know chemically from a chemistry standpoint in well-aerated soils, MSMA can undergo a form of oxidation, reacting with oxygen, right? Oxidation. And you end up getting an arsenate or an arsenic acid that ends up forming from it, right? And that's just a natural soil interaction that occurs when you make these applications. Then you had a not great situation, which is especially not great because in hydraulic or chemically reduced soils, so meaning soils that are either so saturated with water that there's no oxygen, or hydraulic in a sense that there's literally nothing in it except soil is completely devoid of all air, right? Where chemically reduced could just be saturated with water. MSMA can convert to arsenite in that particular scenario, and arsenite is very toxic. More toxic than arsenic acid, and so that is kind of the risk there, is that we have 2 not good toxicity and then an especially not great toxicity profile that's kind of a downstream potential effect of MSMA, right? However, the EPA ended up saying that, well, possibly what has happened here is that we've seen leaching that has moved from the surrounding course into the water. What it didn't take into account was, did someone dispose of a container in the pond or whatever else nefarious thing that might have happened? It was just kind of an immediate shut or close, because typically what ends up happening is that MSMA binds quite tightly to soil. In and of itself, it's not very mobile. So what they were seeing with it being in a pond didn't exactly make sense as far as like runoff from the course, unless it was actually like runoff of concentrate or runoff of spray, spraying at the wrong time, rain washes it in, or like I said, actually discarding like a used container or a partial container, or even just at a complete sabotage, multiple containers into it. You never know, right? So what the EPA said is that because even though it does tightly bind to soil, because of these metabolites it ends up chemically breaking into, it's got to go, because in these forms, it does spread a little bit more easily. And if it spreads, that means that you can increase the toxicity, the toxic risk to a wider area. Now, back to those experts that came in and were giving testimony. This is some of the things that just naturally happen and occur throughout the course of the United States. Why? Arsenic is literally everywhere. Why is it everywhere? It's an element that's on the periodic table. It exists in nature. How do we find it? We found it in nature. Where do we most find it? We find it in clay soils. We find it in water runoff areas where water has cut through clay soils. You know, for instance, like maybe parts of the northern parts of the Mississippi here, right? Or it has cut through bedrock. And the majority of the arsenic we're going to find is going to be in areas that once were previously mined, right? And what happens in those mining areas is that you're breaking apart these large rocks to extract the minerals that you're looking for. And, you know, if you look, it kind of starts to make sense, right? Over here in Nevada, we know we have big lithium deposits in Nevada. Out here along the coast in Northern California, of course, that was Gold Rush Town, right? Up in Montana, of course, very rocky area up here. Even as you get into the Northeast and into New England, we're dealing with some of the highest levels of arsenic, again, due to the composition of the bedrock. However, what I marked over here, and we'll talk about this too, is that this box right here signifies where the heaviest use of MSMA occurred. What you don't see is high amounts, or in some instances, no detectable levels. You can kind of cross-reference it here. No detectable levels of arsenic in groundwater. But this is where our heaviest use occurred. Right. Because it's not there. And the reason why is that ultimately it became very bound up in its in the soil and was able to exist there in a relatively safe way. Or more, I'll say, instead of a safe way, in an expected way, right? So it didn't make its way into water. Now, here is you know, kind of the thing about it, right? You can come to it with data like this. You can come to it with data like this, that look, it's just naturally occurring everywhere. And as we see here, you know, we've got it in areas that where MSMA was never applied. I promise. In northern Wisconsin, MSMA was never being applied. You can take my word for that. Up on the coastal Maine, not being applied. Central California, probably in the southern parts of it there. Yeah, we did see some. However, again, we were talking about mining. This is going to be a natural bedrock deposit. Over here in Texas, natural bedrock deposit. So my point being is that because it is an element of nature, you're going to find it if you look for it, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that it was deposited by an herbicide application. So once it was removed, then the great debate was, what do we do in its place? I will say that when I was around for that, where everyone ran to was a brand new herbicide called Celsius. And at the time, I was young and dumb, and I felt like this was a drug company that was releasing a drug, and it gave you a whole host of things that it solved, and it was up to you to deduce what the side effects were going to be, right? Or so anyway, when Celsius came out, the company I worked for at the time, we bought a ton of it, and we went spraying it to watch what happened. And it was really exciting, right? Because you loaded up, you mixed up your Celsius, you made your application, you came back 2 weeks later, and without a doubt, it was very obvious there was significant plant injury to the Dallisgrass. The problem was, is you came back 4 weeks later, and that injury no longer existed. And like, okay, similar to MSMA, so of course you have to hit it twice. That's stated in the label, nothing to freak out about. You make your application, you hit it 2 weeks later, you make your application, and 2 weeks after that, so now that it's had two sequential applications, you come back and look, and it came back and it looks fine. It's like, well, maybe the timing of the rain was wrong. Maybe it was a little bit too dry at application. We'll try it again, right? So go over to your other site, make a third application there. So 3 applications in 6 weeks, and then 8 weeks you come back. It appears as if nothing has been sprayed. And so what we quickly learned was, well, Celsius isn't an MSMA replacement. But, of course, you go to your manufacturer and you're like, hey, this isn't working. Not the manufacturer, I'm sorry, your distributor. Hey, this isn't working. They talk to the manufacturer, and then you get a new list of ideas. Okay, well, let's try it with a different surfactant. Let's try treating the water. Let's time the application in the fall prior to dormancy. What we're going to do is we're going to do 2 in the fall and 1 in the spring. And I will say that targeting Dallisgrass in general, that's always probably the best way to go about it. At least in my experience, the best way of targeting Dallisgrass is 2 applications in the fall, 1 in the spring. And so it was normal for us to hear that. Of course, started running with it. And again in the spring, and I will say that we did see a degree of suppression, but never Celsius in and of itself offering complete and total control. We really didn't get that far into it until we started seeing some data come out about Tribute Total. Again, 2 applications in the fall, 1 in the spring. We're getting 60 to 80% Dallisgrass control for 9 months. The big thing here is that you have a use rate per year limitation of 6.4 ounces. But one of the things that the label does give you freedom on is a different rate as a spot treatment, right? And as that spot treatment, chances are you're likely going to get a higher degree of control than you would as a broadcast application. And I will say this, very seldom. I've lived in a lot of places of the South, and you may pull up on a new farm, convert a farm into a lawn area where you do have wall-to-wall Dallisgrass. But I'll say this is that the number of properties you come across today that are wall-to-wall Dallisgrass is not as bad as it was in the late 2000s or even the mid 2010s, right? It was literally just about every property you came up to that was a new property was wall-to-wall Dallisgrass, right? And so that was where MSMA really shined. But now with tools like this, getting 60 to 80% in 1 year and then a multi-year approach, all of a sudden you can get those same results. It's a little bit slower, but you're also not having to handle arsenic compounds anymore. You're not having to worry about risking your license anymore. You're not having to worry about risking your insurance anymore. You're not having to worry about risking your bond anymore for all you licensed applicators out there, right? Here's a couple of things that they ended up seeing here, right? So we had 2 fall applications and then 1 in the spring at various rates. And we see 10 weeks after initial application and 37 weeks after initial application, we're moving into 97. So this is thiocarbazone methyl, forum sulfuron, and halsulfuron methyl, also known as Tribute Total, right? So Tribute Total followed by Tribute Total 4 weeks after initial treatment. So 4 weeks followed by 4 weeks. And then, testing various rates per hectare there. And that obviously got the most control, but we can see here, again, another one, this would be an FBW here, so followed by treatments containing sequential applications were made at the same rate as the initial application, right? As we move down here, we see single applications just never did quite perform well, but the sequential applications of September plus October, so September followed by October, 37 weeks after initial treatment, we're at 95% control. That is actually better than MSMA. So as far as the product is concerned, this is a good product. Now, here's the thing, is that what a lot of people do not pay attention to when it comes to using this product, and I'm going to read this in case you can't see it, but it says it includes these treatments using Tribute Total included methylated seed oil, ammonium sulfate, and 0.5% by volume and 2% weight by volume, respectively, right? So very precise instructions on the methylated seed oil at 0.5% by volume and the ammonium sulfate at 2% weight by volume, right? So dialing in, and a lot of times, in a lot of the complaints I see about Tribute Total, and you ask, did you use ammonium sulfate to buffer your water? No? Okay. Did you include a methylated seed oil with it? No? Okay. One of the other things that is not often talked about, and definitely not talked about enough, and should be talked about more often, is the combination of cultural practices to enhance efficacy of weed control. Okay, I think we're seeing more of this in cool season grass. No, I wouldn't even say in cool season grass. We're seeing more of this in sports turf and in golf right now with phrase mowing as a management tool for Poa annua, right? Here, we're talking about verticutting, and we're talking about verticutting at 1.9 centimeters deep and a scalp, a mowing height scalp of 2.5 centimeters. So as we say, this would be literally cutting it to the dirt and verticutting, and a lot of times this is done, in sequence here. And you can take a look here below, and it'll spell out exactly how they did it, okay? What is interesting here is that as we start looking out at 17 weeks after initial treatment of 85 and 86% control of Dallisgrass, we are using TRI plus CV. So what is TRI low plus, TFH? That is going to be thiacarbazone, forum sulfuron, and halsulfuron, also known as tribute total. And then here, in this particular instance, TRI is trifloxysulfuron at a high carrier volume and a high herbicide rate, right? So max rate on trifloxysulfuron, also known as Monument, at a high carrier volume. So don't go spray this at a half gallon per 1,000 square feet. High carrier volume, we're talking about 2 gallons per 1,000 square feet, or 100 gallons an acre. You pick your poison in there, but that higher volume to ensure a good application. And what you end up going to be seeing with that is that more ends up making it into the soil as well too. That's kind of some theoreticals we could bounce around there, but I'm not going to do that for this video. But we see respectively 86 and 85%. Statistically, there is no difference there. So we have Monument, when combined with this treatment, actually working as well as Tribute Total did. Now, what's fascinating about this is it worked better than MSMA. It worked better than MSMA by a lot. Look at the statistical significance there. That's a lot better, okay? So wherever this fervor and this fascination with MSMA being the best thing that ever existed or the best option for managing Dallisgrass came from, really just comes from a place of ignorance, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to the little things, right? Paying attention to the details, including cultural practices is part of your weed management strategy. It's a smart thing to do, including the details of the label, actually following the label, not just the mix rate for the herbicide, but also those additional details like a tank buffer or calcium sequesterer like ammonium sulfate, and an appropriate rate of a methylated seed oil. Not your standard spreader sticker, not a squirt of Dawn, not a two glug, 3 glug, hope and mix. This requires a little bit more precision because these are more precise, low use rate herbicides, right? As far as other alternatives, of course, we talked about Monument. Again, low heights of cut, incorporating with your cultural practices is actually quite effective there. But in and of itself, just making Monument applications, it's not going to be very effective. Just a degree of suppression. Revolver in and of itself as a spot treatment at high rates here, so 2 fluid ounces 1,000. It is what I would consider a very weak suppressant, right? But we get into Celsius here, and again, Celsius in and of itself offers moderate suppression. However, Celsius combined with Revolver, and what is Celsius? Celsius is thiacarbazone, iodosulfuron, and I almost said Daconil. Dicamba. It's dicamba, right? But Tribute Total is thiacarbazone, forum sulfuron, halsulfuron. So you can kind of see, they both contain thiacarbazone. They both contain sulfuron, which is revolver, right? What they found is that combining those two had a much more effective level of control than is either product by itself. We already covered tribute total, so I'm not going to go into the details of how to use it. But, what this did was at least Celsius gave some options to be able to knock back or suppress Dallisgrass in Centipede and St. Augustine. You start adding revolver to it, though, it's off the table. But then comes along Manuscript. Why is this fascinating? Because Manuscript has a lot of other grasses on the label, and what it also offers is treatment of Dallisgrass. Here's the caveat. You see that star? These are important parts of the label. When we start talking about these new herbicides and paying attention to the details, you pay attention to that star right there. What does that star say? The star says, Manuscript provides optimum control when applied in the late summer, early fall, when Dallisgrass is actively growing and not under drought stress. If it is shriveling from drought stress, that's a bad time to apply. Applications outside the ideal timing will only provide Dallisgrass suppression. Then, not only do you have that, you have to pay attention to the use directions as well. Dallisgrass, here's the rate. Apply to actively growing weeds. Repeat applications 14 to 21 days later. Add MSO at 0.64 ounces per gallon. Apply as a spot treatment to control individual weeds or small areas when weed pressure is high. Spray weeds until wet but avoid runoff. Spot treatments are likely to cause yellowing and growth regulatory effects on the turf grass, right? So, again, this is one of those things you have to pay attention to all these new details, right? One of the things that is new for 2023 is Syngenta got approved a new label addition for Manuscript. It's actually adding new turfgrass species, so now we have Centipede, some fine fescues, and Poa annua on it. We have options for controlling ryegrass in Poa annua, so if you got Poa greens or you're trying to get rid of ryegrass on it, that's now something that is available to you. Foxtails, ryegrass, and barnyard grass. So anyway, kind of opened up a lot of flexibility with Manuscript. I actually like seeing this herbicide come out, and I think as we move further along away from its newness, it'll become more widely adopted. I know I'm going to get the questions, so I'll go ahead and cover it. Hey man, I've got cool season grass. I've got Kentucky bluegrass. I've got fescue. What do I spray on it? Well, we don't have just a ton of options, but we do have some options, right? Number one is mesotrione. I want to preface it as this. MSMA is an absolute garbage option for what? Is a garbage option for cool season grass. If anyone ever tries to tell you that that's a good idea, slap them. Just real quick from the back pocket, whap! Knock their ass out. Maybe guys that have 10 years experience in the field, but in today's day and age, if anyone says, if you got Kentucky bluegrass or you got tall fescue, and you should try a little MSMA, literally slap the hell out of them. They're morons, right? So even though some people did try to do it with varying degrees of failure, there's better options out there, especially today, right? What we have first is mesotrione, also known as tenacity. I believe this is from Penn State University. 2 applications of mesotrione were effective, reducing Dallisgrass cover to 17% compared to the 85% in the check plots. That's quite effective. Mesotrione shows potential to control Dallisgrass with better safety on Kentucky bluegrass than MSMA. So you got a better safety profile. You have a great degree of cover reduction that took place here. And we call that a win. Next year's study will focus on up to 3 applications of mesotrione made earlier to less mature Dallisgrass. I couldn't find it while I was doing the research for this. But I have seen others in that vein that did get it down to about 10% coverage in that 3 sequential application timing in the fall. I haven't seen it done fall into spring. I'm sure the data's out there somewhere and someone can cite it and show me what it looks like in one of those 37 weeks after initial treatment type of tables. We have fluazepop. I want to make this very clear. Fluazepop is risky as hell. 4 ounces per gallon, something like that. You're going to end up using it as a non-selective herbicide and nothing's going to grow there for a long period of time. Read your label if you use fluazepop. Use it as a spot application. Don't go making blanket applications of fluazepop to treat a few plants of Dallisgrass. You're going to end up causing a lot of problems. Anyone that has used fluazepop regularly over a period of years is going to make a mistake where it got a little bit too spicy, and it's going to be really long lasting. Read the label. We're talking about 0.2 ounces, not 2 ounces, right? We also have Pilex. And I know there was some research done actually out of Knoxville and at UT Knoxville, and what they were looking at was a spot treatment application of 1 mil per 1,000 square feet and having good degree of success following the treatment protocol of twice in the fall, once in the spring. Okay, so we have way better options now than we even had then when we were trying to figure out what to do with Dallisgrass in cool season grass then. What we used to do was just spray it with glyphosate and then reseed the area, which is actually a very valid thing to do. In fact, you can even do that in Bermuda grass to a degree, right? The timing of it with Bermuda grass is a little bit more difficult because you have to time it when the Dallis goes dormant prior to the Bermuda grass. And depending on where you live, a lot of times they may be going dormant actually at the same time due to drought. I'm thinking about people in like East Texas, especially in the Southeast, like we had a fall this year. Everything went dormant at the same time. That was warm season because, not the cold, due to the drought. What does the future hold for MSMA? The future for MSMA holds, in my opinion, absolutely nothing. I don't think it's going to come back. There have been murmurs from time to time that there's a chance. So maybe there's a chance. Give them a chance. But in the reality is that I have zero expectations, and that's why I chose right here. Expect nothing, and you'll never be disappointed. Don't get your hopes up. We live in a time where it is easier than ever to exist and operate a lawn care business without the use of MSMA. I'm going to have some closing thoughts, but before we get there, I really want to talk to you about who sponsored this video. Big shout out to my buddies over at GAINTRUST. Let me tell you a little bit about what they have done for me.
When I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, I made the decision that I was going to become a better version of myself. How did I do that? I did it with a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of consistency, and a lot of long days. You can do the exact same thing I did. Not wanting to get hurt and wanting a form of accountability, I decided to join GAINTRUST. At GAINTRUST, I work with not just a community, but also coaches who help me tailor my program to get the absolute best results possible. You can too. GAINTRUST.us. Join the Discord.
The great thing about it is that also that same thing can happen for you. And I challenge you. I make a personal challenge to you to take it upon yourself to become the best version of yourself. Do it for your family. Do it for your career. Do it for your kids. Do it for your loved ones. Whatever the case may be, damn it, do it for yourself. But I promise it's easily obtainable. Just let the guys over at GAINTRUST tell you how to get it done. GAINTRUST.us. You can check out their Discord, all the other fun stuff they got going on. Awesome guys. Can't wait to see you over there. All right, everyone, to summarize this video, I think what's most interesting about MSMA today and the velocity at which it disappeared, I'm stealing that word from DeMay, is it's an opportunity for us to reflect on how quickly things in this industry that we've become accustomed to can change in an instant, right? And what we saw is that when MSMA lost its label, who was punished first? It was the lawn care guys that were punished first. And the reason why is that it probably had the widest reach in lawn care. However, were the most negligent violations of use occurring in lawn care? Probably not. It probably wasn't really anywhere that a lot of negligent applications were being made. But they had to show someone that something was facing punishment as a result of the problem that existed, right? So everyone needs to point and figure out who's going to take the blame, whether it be glyphosate, whether it be MSMA, whether it be a lawn care professional, whether it be, and again, it was on a golf course where they find high arsenic levels in water. You would think golf would be the ones who would lose the label for it. No, golf was able to keep a label functioning for up until at least 2019. I don't know if you still can, but at least until 2019, they still had a label for use case scenarios of MSMA, even though that was what kicked off the whole thing. We're reaching a time where in the lawn care community, we have to be more precise about what we do than ever before. And I hope that with the story of this product, I can inspire you to take on that additional level of precision. It's a differentiator between you and the rest of your competition. It's a differentiator between you and the lowest of the low that our industry sometimes is going to drag along. Make it your responsibility to pay attention, be more precise, be more efficient, be more deliberate, be more educated, be more learned about the decisions you make while you're out in the field. That is what MSMA did for me. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. We got many more to come. If you have any questions about it, if you have any comments about it, I'll take them all. Comment down below. Again, if you enjoyed it, it costs nothing. Subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Y'all have a good one.